Policeman kicks out homeless girl, and 7 minutes later what appears will leave you totally shocked. Downtown San Diego bustled with the usual rhythm of indifferent footsteps and hurried lives. But what happened one chilly afternoon would shake that routine to its core and force a city to confront its conscience. It started with a homeless girl, alone and ignored, and ended with a reckoning led not by violence, but by integrity. A man trained to face war arrived not with fists, but with truth, and in just 7 minutes everything changed. This is a story that will challenge your heart, stir your sense of justice, and remind you that even in the darkest corners of society, the light of humanity can still shine through. If this story moves you, leave your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes one voice can change everything. Her name was Samantha, but nobody had called her that in weeks. At just 12 years old, she sat cross-legged on the concrete sidewalk. Her oversized hoodie swallowed her thin frame, and her tangled brown hair hung over her eyes like a curtain against the world. Her shoes didn't match. Her backpack had a broken zipper, and the cold wind gnawed at her tiny fingers. Yet she made no sound, asked for nothing, and looked straight ahead with a kind of silent dignity. Every morning, Samantha walked through downtown San Diego with a worn-out map of places where she might find warmth: the public library, a back alley behind a laundry shop that didn't chase her off, and today, the bakery on 7th Street. It smelled like heaven inside. Fresh bread, cinnamon rolls, and sometimes, if she was lucky, a kind old lady named Rosa would sneak her a buttered croissant through the back door. But today, Rosa wasn't working. So Samantha waited quietly, her eyes on the ground, her stomach empty since yesterday. People walked by, some glanced, most ignored. A couple laughed. One even said, "Where's your mom, kid?" and kept walking. But Samantha didn't flinch. She had learned that asking for help usually meant more questions, and questions always led to child services. And child services meant going back to the last foster home where bruises were normal and silence was expected. The day she escaped, she ran for 3 hours straight before hiding under a bridge. For the night. That was 42 days ago. And in those 42 days, no one had asked her name. No one had asked if she was okay. Until today. But not the way she imagined, because the first person to speak to her today was a cop, and not a kind one. The officer's boots landed heavily on the sidewalk, echoing like thunder against the nearby brick buildings. Samantha didn't look up at first. She'd learned not to react too quickly, but the loud clearing of his throat made her flinch. "Get up," he barked. "You can't sit here." She looked up slowly, confusion in her eyes. "I'm not bothering anyone. I said get up." His voice rose. "This is private property. Unless you want me to call Child Protective Services right now, you better disappear." Samantha's breath caught in her throat. CPS. Those 3 letters hit her like a punch in the gut. Her small hands gripped the straps of her backpack as she slowly stood. A few people across the street paused. A man holding a coffee raised his phone. A woman whispered to her friend, "She's just a kid." But no one stepped in. The officer leaned in, towering over Samantha. "What did I just say?" "I wasn't asking for anything," she whispered. "I'm just cold." He grabbed her by the upper arm, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to scare. "How you want to be cold? Try spending the night in juvie." Samantha's eyes widened. "Please, I don't want to go back there." "Oh, you've been in the system?" "That explains it," he muttered with disgust. A few people now had their phones out. The officer noticed and, in a performative gesture, released her arm and stepped back. "You've got 2 minutes to disappear." Samantha didn't wait. She clutched her backpack to her chest and ran down the sidewalk, turning the corner past the alley, tears stinging her eyes. She didn't cry for pity. She cried because she felt small, because the world had once again made her feel like nothing. But the officer didn't know someone had been watching. Not just the people with phones, but someone else. Someone who had stopped at the red light across the street. Someone whose sharp eyes had caught the interaction from start to finish. A man with a calm posture, a steady breath, and a gaze that had seen both chaos and silence in combat zones far away. He crossed the street with purpose. His boots not loud, but deliberate. And he wasn't holding a phone, he wasn't looking to film. He was looking for answers. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice calm but cutting through the air like a blade. The officer turned, visibly annoyed. "Can I help you?" The man was in his late 30s, dressed in plain jeans and a grey hoodie. Clean-cut, fit, eyes sharp. He didn't look like trouble, but he didn't look like someone to mess with either. He stood with his hands relaxed at his sides, but there was something unsettling about how steady he was. "I saw what happened," the man said. "Why were you grabbing that girl?" "She was trespassing," the officer snapped. "She's homeless, probably ran away from some group home. Trust me, they all do. I gave her a chance to leave and she did. End of story." The man tilted his head slightly. "She looked scared." "Yeah, well, maybe she should be," the officer muttered. "Keeps them from turning into criminals later." A small crowd had started to gather nearby. No one said anything, but not yet. But eyes darted back and forth between the two men. The officer shifted, sensing the growing attention. "Look, I don't know what your deal is, but unless you're her caseworker or a lawyer, you should mind your own." "I am her brother," the man said quietly. The cop paused. The crowd suddenly leaned in. "Wait, what?" the officer said, face stiffening. "She's been missing for 6 weeks, the man continued, his tone unwavering. "We were placed in separate foster homes after our mom died. I've been searching for her every day since she disappeared. And you just manhandled her in the middle of the street." The officer blinked. "There's no way. That girl didn't mention anything. She didn't say she had family." "She's 12, the man said. "She's traumatized. She doesn't trust anyone." His voice never rose. His hands never clenched. But every word hit like a hammer, not of rage, but of truth. "I'm asking you this once," he said, stepping closer. "Where did she go?" The officer stammered. I didn't arrest her. She ran off that way toward the alley." Without another word, the man turned and walked briskly in the direction the officer had pointed. The officer called out, "Hey, I didn't do anything wrong, all right? She was just another—" But the man didn't look back. Because he wasn't just a brother. He was a Navy SEAL, and he'd just found the trail of his missing sister, Samantha. Had stopped 2 blocks away, hidden behind a graffiti-tagged dumpster in a narrow alley that smelled of motor oil and wet cardboard. She was shaking, more from emotion than cold. Her knees were pressed to her chest, her backpack hugged tight. She couldn't cry anymore. The tears had already dried into streaks on her cheeks. She kept repeating to herself, "Don't go. Back, don't go back, don't go back." Footsteps echoed near the alley entrance. Her head snapped up, heart thudding. She pressed back against the wall, bracing herself for another confrontation. But then she heard it. "Sammy?" Her breath hitched. Nobody had called her that name in months, not since the night she ran. Not since she last heard it whispered under a blanket fort by someone who once promised he'd never stop protecting her. "Sammy, it's me, it's Jake." She froze. Jake. She couldn't believe it. She didn't want to believe it. Hope had been dangerous. For too long, but the voice kept coming, gentle now. "I've been looking for you every day, I never stopped." She peeked out from behind the dumpster. There he was, same warm eyes, same lopsided smile, same dog tags around his neck. Her eyes welled instantly. She stood slowly, trembling like a leaf. "Jake?" He nodded. She ran, not away, toward him. And he met her halfway, dropping to his knees as she crashed into his arms. He wrapped her tightly, protectively, like nothing else in the world mattered. "You found me," she sobbed. "I told you I would," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. Behind them, a few passers-by had stopped in silence. The man with the coffee, the woman from earlier, even the officer standing at a distance now, unsure whether to walk away or say something. And that's when someone whispered from the sidewalk, "Wait, is that Jake Brennan?" The name rippled like a wave through the growing crowd. Jake Brennan and the Navy SEAL? Didn't he save that platoon in Syria? Wasn't he in that documentary? The cop's eyes widened. Suddenly, he realized what the others already had. This wasn't just a concerned civilian. This was Chief Petty Officer Jake Brennan, decorated with 2 bronze stars, a silver star, and a reputation for heroism that extended far beyond military circles. His face had appeared on CNN and military tribute specials. He was a living example of honor, discipline, and now family. The officer stepped back, shame slowly blooming across his face. Because in the span of 7 minutes, the girl he treated like trash had become the little sister of a national hero, and the whole city was watching. The video was already online. The man with the coffee had uploaded it within minutes. A 94-second clip showing a uniformed officer grabbing a young homeless girl, barking at her, threatening her. Then a second clip, the one where Jake Brennan calmly stepped in, identified himself, and revealed the truth. Within hours, the video exploded on social media. "Look, Samantha is my sister" started trending by nightfall. Thousands commented, outraged at how the child was treated. Others shared personal stories of foster care, homelessness, and the many invisible children lost in a broken system. But the reaction wasn't just digital. By the next morning, Channel 5 San Diego aired a segment. Decorated Navy SEAL reunites with missing sister and exposes troubling street-level neglect. Other networks followed. National outlets picked it up. Samantha's story wasn't just about neglect. It was about what happens when the system fails to ask the right questions, and when those who are supposed to protect judge instead. Meanwhile, Jake stayed with Samantha at a secure shelter run by a Veterans Support Foundation. They gave her clean clothes, warm meals, and her own room. For the first time in months, she slept without fear. But Jake's face was stoic. His rage wasn't loud. It burned cold and focused. Behind the scenes, he called a lawyer, then another. He filed for emergency custody. He contacted Child Protective Services and demanded an internal review of every home Samantha had been placed in since their mother's death. The video of the officer had triggered an investigation. The San Diego Police Department put him on administrative leave pending review. Public pressure mounted quickly, and it wasn't just the officer's actions under scrutiny. It was the entire chain of oversight that had allowed Samantha to go missing for 42 days without triggering a full search. And yet, in the midst of this storm, Samantha struggled with something deeper. Why did it take Jake showing up for people to care? Why didn't anyone see her before? Why didn't anyone ask her name? And though she was now warm, fed, and safe, something inside her still hurt, because the truth wasn't just that she had been found. It was that no one noticed she was lost in the first place, and now the world would have to answer for it. 3 days after finding Samantha, Jake Brennan stood in a narrow government hallway lined with peeling paint and tired chairs. His jaw was clenched. His military-issued boots clicked softly against the linoleum floor. He had faced insurgents, IEDs, and missions that lasted days without sleep, but none of that had prepared him for the cold bureaucracy of Child Protective Services. The woman across the desk didn't meet his eyes. "We're aware of the viral video," she said flatly, "but the department has policies and—" Jake leaned forward, slow and deliberate. "My sister was missing for 6 weeks. No Amber Alert, no field checks, no follow-up from the last foster home. Just a paper trail and a shrug. Mr. Brennan, she was living on the streets," he cut in, his voice steady. "And no one noticed. You didn't even file her as endangered. She was listed as a runaway, not uncommon." "She's 12, Jake snapped. "She ran because she was being abused. Your system didn't miss that. It ignored it." The woman finally looked up. For a moment, she saw the steel in his expression, the sharp calculation of a man who'd led missions in silence and brought entire squads home alive. Jake took a deep breath and slid a folder across the desk. "I'm applying for full custody." "Permanently?" The woman opened it. Inside, his service record, honorable discharge, housing documents, and letters of recommendation from senior officers, psychologists, and a family court attorney. "You've only been in contact for a few days," she said cautiously. "Are you sure this is what she wants?" Jake didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket, a crumpled drawing, stick figures holding hands under a blue sky, signed in Samantha's uneven handwriting. It had been tucked inside her old backpack. She drew this when she was 6. She told me she'd show it to me again someday, when she felt safe. The woman looked down, silent now. Outside, Samantha waited in the hallway, swinging her legs nervously from a metal chair. When Jake came out, she looked up. "Well?" she asked. He knelt beside her. "I'm going to take you home," he said. She blinked. "Home? Wherever you are," he whispered. "That's where home is now." She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. She didn't need a mansion, or toys, or new clothes. She just needed him. And for the first time in her life, someone had chosen her without hesitation. The question now was, would the system let him? 2 days later, Jake sat across from a family court mediator in a modest hearing room downtown. The walls were beige, the fluorescent lights too bright. Samantha sat beside him, her small hand clutching his. She was quiet, but alert, watching everything, like a kid who'd grown up too fast. The woman at the head of the table cleared her throat. "Mr. Brennan, we've reviewed your file. You're clearly a responsible adult with an honorable record, but you have no parenting experience, no spouse, and due to your previous deployments, minimal family support in this area. Given Samantha's trauma, this might not be ideal." Jake nodded once. "I understand." The woman glanced at Samantha. "Sweetheart, would you feel more comfortable living with a trained foster family who's used to working with kids like you?" Samantha didn't blink. She answered quietly, "I don't need someone who's used to kids like me. I need someone who knows me." The mediator hesitated. "Samantha, we just want what's best for you." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay," he whispered. Samantha looked the woman in the eye. "I've had what's best for me my whole life. Social workers, emergency homes, a lot of rules, a lot of people who said they cared, but didn't listen." The room fell silent. "I ran away," she said, "and I was ready to never go back. But he found me, and for the first time I didn't feel like a problem. I felt like me." Jake looked at her, fighting the emotion in his chest. This girl, this brave, resilient girl, was choosing him just as much as he was choosing her. But it wasn't that simple. Later that afternoon, Jake sat with his lawyer outside the courtroom. "They're stalling," the attorney said. "They're going to recommend temporary foster care while they evaluate stability." Jake looked out the window, jaw tight. "They're not thinking about her," he murmured. "They're thinking about their liability." "You've got options. You could appeal. You could go public. Again, you could even sue." Jake didn't answer. He was already thinking ahead, calculating as he always had in the field. But this mission was personal. He didn't need tactics. He needed faith. That evening, he sat with Samantha under a string of lights at the veterans' shelter. They were quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "What if they don't let me stay with you?" Jake exhaled. "Then I'll fight. Not with fists, not with anger, but with every breath I've got. Because I didn't come all this way to let them take you again." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I don't want anyone else," she whispered. And Jake realized it wasn't just about paperwork. It was about proving that family isn't built on legal documents or DNA. It's built on choice, and he had already made his. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. The court ruled in Jake's favor. It wasn't dramatic. No viral clip. No fiery confrontation. Just a quiet morning in a county courtroom where a judge reviewed the full case and saw what others had missed. Temporary custody is granted to Mr. Brennan with conditions for review in 6 months, the judge said, peering over her glasses. Based on the evidence provided and the minor's own statement, it is in her best interest to remain in his care. Samantha gasped. Jake didn't say a word. He simply closed his eyes and whispered a quiet thank you under his breath. When they left the courthouse, the morning air smelled different, lighter, like possibility. They didn't go straight home. Jake took her to the ocean. They stood together on a cliffside path overlooking the Pacific, the wind tousling their hair. Below them, waves crashed in a rhythm that felt like breathing. "I always wanted to see this," Samantha said, eyes wide. Jake looked at her. "Why didn't you say something?" She shrugged. Never thought I'd get the chance. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket, a to-do list, hand-scribbled and wrinkled. At the top, in all caps, Sammy's new life. She read the first few lines. See the ocean, eat a pizza without sharing it. Get a bed with soft pillows, paint a wall any color she wants, go to school and not be scared. You wrote this? She asked. He nodded. It's a mission list. She smiled. Can I add stuff? Jake grinned. It's your mission now too. Over the next few weeks, they started checking things off. Samantha painted her bedroom wall turquoise. She got her first library card. Jake enrolled her in a small charter school where teachers greeted students by name. At first, she didn't speak much. But then came the art class, and her drawings told stories even she couldn't find words for. People in the community noticed. Donations began arriving anonymously, clothes, books, even a second-hand bike. One afternoon, Samantha found a note inside her backpack that read, "The world failed you once, it won't happen again." Jake hung it on the fridge. The transformation wasn't sudden. There were still nightmares, hard questions, quiet dinners. But every day, Samantha stood a little taller. Every day, Jake smiled a little easier, because healing didn't require perfection. It just required being there. And for the first time in her life, Samantha wasn't surviving. She was living. 2 months later, Jake received an unexpected phone call. It was from the mayor's office. They were organizing a community event, a joint project with the Veterans Affairs Department and Child Services to raise awareness about foster care reform. They wanted Jake to speak. More than that, they wanted to recognize him. Jake hesitated. "I didn't do anything special," he said into the phone. "I just found my sister." But the woman on the other end replied, "Exactly. And that's what makes it special, that you showed up." Jake agreed under one condition: Samantha had to be there too. The day of the event arrived. It was held in a downtown park near the waterfront. Tents lined the walkway, with booths offering resources for veterans, foster families, and youth programs. A small stage faced a crowd of folding chairs. The air was warm, the sky an honest blue. Jake wore a simple button-down shirt. Samantha stood beside him in a denim jacket with patches she'd sewn on herself, tiny emblems that told her story: a paintbrush, a book, a lightning bolt. They sat near the front, quiet but proud. When Jake's name was called, applause followed. He walked up, took the microphone, and paused. "I'm not a speaker," he began. "I'm just a brother. I spent years overseas fighting battles. But the hardest one I ever fought was right here, for the right to protect my own family." He turned to Samantha, who gave him a shy smile. "She doesn't need me to rescue her. She needed someone to believe her, and to believe in her." There was a moment of deep silence, followed by a wave of clapping, not polite but genuine. Not just for Jake, but for Samantha too. Afterward, people approached them. A retired teacher said, "Your story reminded me why I went into education." A young girl from the crowd handed Samantha a note. "I'm in foster care too. You give me hope." Local news stations picked up the event, and for once the headlines weren't about tragedy, but resilience. Jake was offered roles on advisory boards. Samantha was invited to participate in a youth art program. Donations surged to the shelter that had given them temporary housing. But through all the recognition, Jake and Samantha stayed grounded. They didn't want fame, they wanted change. And without realizing it, they had become the voice for thousands of others, kids forgotten by the system and siblings trying to keep each other whole. Jake once fought for his country. Now he was fighting for something even more sacred, a future. A month after the community event, Jake was checking the mail when he found a plain white envelope without a return address. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "You don't know me, but I was the officer that day, the one who pushed your sister away." Jake froze. He sat down on the porch step, reading slowly. "I watched the footage of myself online, and I hated what I saw. I didn't just fail her, I failed every kid I swore to protect. I thought I was doing my job, but I forgot the human part of it. After that day I was put on leave, I deserved it. But I've been using that time to volunteer at a youth shelter. I wanted you to know. Your sister changed something in me." There was no signature. Jake folded the letter and stared out toward the street. He didn't know how to feel. Part of him burned with everything that had happened. The fear in Samantha's eyes, the shame she'd carried. But another part understood. That day had been a wake-up call, and maybe, just maybe, it had woken someone else up too. He didn't tell Samantha right away. He wanted her peace to be hers, uninterrupted. But a few days later, she walked into the living room holding the letter. "You left it on the table," she said. Jake looked at her, ready to explain, but she simply said, "I'm glad he saw it." "You're not mad?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "I was. But if people don't get a chance to be better, what's the point?" Jake smiled, 12 years old and already teaching him things he never learned in all his deployments. That weekend, as a quiet rain fell over the city, Samantha stood in front of her art class with a new painting. It showed a small girl on a bench beside a police officer, but this time they were talking, not yelling. The girl was smiling, holding a cup of hot cocoa. The officer was listening. She called the painting "Start Over," and in that moment, everyone in the room knew. This wasn't just a story about a rescue. It was about redemption. And sometimes the final twist isn't a punishment. It's a second chance. 6 months passed. The city was warmer now, touched by spring. The trees downtown had started to bloom again, and laughter echoed from parks instead of car horns. Samantha walked to school each day with a little more bounce in her step, a little more color in her cheeks. Her teachers said she was opening up, and not just with art, but with words. One day, she even read aloud in class. At home, Jake had adjusted to civilian life in ways he never expected. His days were no longer measured in operations or drills, but in lunches packed, math homework checked, and late-night runs for ice cream because someone couldn't sleep without it. Their apartment wasn't fancy, but it was safe. There were sticky notes on the fridge, dishes in the sink, a framed copy of Samantha's art hanging in the hallway. It was theirs, built not from money, but from moments. Jake never stopped advocating. He continued working with local organizations, speaking quietly at small events, meeting with state officials behind closed doors, not for attention, but for results. Laws didn't change overnight, but conversations started. And sometimes, that was enough. Samantha began writing. At first it was just journal entries and story drafts, but soon it grew into poems, letters, and dreams about becoming a writer someday. One evening, Jake came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, reading aloud from a letter she'd written for her English class. "Some people think heroes wear uniforms. Mine wears jeans and drinks too much coffee. He listens when I don't know how to talk. He showed me I wasn't broken, just waiting to be seen. He didn't save me with strength, he saved me by staying." Jake didn't say anything. He just walked over and pulled her into a hug. "I still think your spelling's a little shaky," he teased, wiping a tear. She laughed. "I'm working on it." In that moment, there was no viral video, no courtroom, no street confrontation. Just a brother and sister in a quiet kitchen where pain had once lived, and been replaced by something much stronger, peace. Some stories stay with you not because of their drama, but because of their truth. A girl, a sidewalk, a brother, a moment. That's all it took to expose a fracture in the world and begin to mend it. Samantha's story wasn't rare. That was the painful part. Thousands of children walk the same streets, invisible. Thousands of siblings are separated, misplaced, misjudged. Systems meant to protect sometimes become cages made of checklists and cold policies. But what changed everything that day wasn't force or viral fame or even the uniform Jake once wore. It was something much simpler: presence. Jake showed up. He listened. He believed. He looked beyond the surface of a tired girl with mismatched shoes and saw a heart still beating, a life still worth everything. And Samantha? She taught the world something too, that even after everything, abandonment, fear, silence, she still chose to trust again. She still had the courage to be kind. In her, we find the reflection of every forgotten child waiting to be noticed. In Jake, we find a blueprint of the kind of man the world needs more of, not because he was perfect, but because he refused to turn away. And in the space between them, that precious, fragile, fiercely protected space, we see what family truly means. It's not about blood, it's about refusal. Refusal to give up, refusal to stay silent, refusal to walk away from those who need us most. So, if you ever find yourself witnessing something wrong, if you ever hear the cry no one else hears, remember, it might only take 7 minutes to change someone's entire world, but it starts with one choice. It's been 1 year since that cold afternoon in downtown San Diego. 1 year since Samantha sat alone on that sidewalk, unseen by the world. 1 year since a police officer made a snap judgment, and one man decided not to walk away. In that year, a lot has changed. Jake and Samantha now live in a small rented house just outside the city, near a nature trail they walk every Sunday. The house isn't big, but it's filled with life. Books stacked on counters, art taped to walls, a kitchen calendar full of school projects and weekend hikes. Jake works part-time with a veteran outreach program. He teaches basic survival skills to at-risk youth and helps train social workers on trauma-informed response. He never uses his rank. He never brings up the viral video. He just does the work. Samantha, now 13, recently published a short story in a student anthology. It was called The Day the Street Got Quiet. Her teacher said it made the room go silent. She smiles more now, laughs harder, trusts deeper. And sometimes when they're sitting outside together, sipping cocoa or watching the stars, Jake will ask her, "You ever think about that day?" "Every now and then," she says. "Regret anything?" She shakes her head. "Only that I thought I was alone." Jake squeezes her shoulder. "You never were." The world has slowed down for them, in a good way. No more cameras, no more microphones, just healing, just growing. And even though no one's filming now and the headlines have long faded, something far more powerful remains. A new chapter, built not on fear, but on faith. Not on rescue, but on resilience. And while Samantha may still carry the weight of her past, it no longer defines her. She's no longer the homeless girl in that video. She's Samantha Brennan, student, artist, survivor. You've just followed the journey of Samantha and Jake, a brother who never gave up, and a sister who found her way back from the edge of being forgotten. But this story isn't just about them, it's about all of us. How often do we pass by someone who needs help and say nothing? How many times do we assume, judge, or look away, when all it might take is 7 minutes to change a life? Samantha's experience may have started in silence, but it ended in a voice loud enough to move a city. Jake didn't need a badge or a courtroom to make a difference. He only needed to see her, truly see her, and act with compassion. So now it's your turn. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know, if it made you pause, even for a moment, don't let it end here. Speak. Up when others stay quiet. Ask questions, reach out, pay attention. There are children like Samantha in every city. There are brothers like Jake holding the line with everything they have. Let's meet them where they are, with courage, with love, and with the willingness to listen before we judge. Have you ever witnessed something that made you want to step in? What would you have done in Jake's place, or in Samantha's? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your story might inspire the next person who's ready to change everything in just 7 minutes.